Welcome everyone. My name is Chanel. I am a UXR at Apple, specializing in accessibility. I'm the founder of Mentor Me Chanel, and I just feel like there should be a realistic way to kind of approach the gaps and discrepancies of representation in our community. I feel like the first place to start is to really start from the bottom up and to build you up. And so what does that look like? Really creating you into an undeniable candidate for these companies. And so if that's resume revisions, career advising, because you may think you want to go into one career and maybe not. Teneika has totally got my life together on that one too. And then also having mentors, having people to help you guide yourself, right, through your journey. So again, welcome everyone for being on today. Thank you to the panelists. This is my tribe. I'm super excited to show you guys how amazing they are and how a little bit of me is actually because of all of them. So we can kind of get started. Did you want to start, Erin?
Sure.
Yeah.
My name is Erin Richter. I'm out of Toronto, Canada. I work for Adidas Canada as a product launch and master data specialist. Essentially what I do is I work within our marketing, our digital marketing, our brand comms, our DVM teams to bring product stories to life. So whether that be new UBs or Yeezys or anything along those lines, we bring those stories to life on site and create the best e-com experiences. So yeah.
Brittany, you want to start? Or Jay? Go ahead there. Yes.
Oh, sorry. I like jumped in. I don't mind who goes, but my name's Daniel. I'm based out of Brooklyn, New York, and I'm a software engineer for the New York Times. My team is responsible for handling all of the home delivery and digital subscriptions that run through the New York Times. So we handle all things that interact with that system. It's a primarily back-end engineering team, but I'm a full-stack engineer, comfortable moving everywhere from front-end to DevOps. I've built numerous things inside and outside of work. If you call into the New York Times, a team that I was working on previously, if you call into the New York Times and interact with the phone system, I built a very large part of that. And really, like, my goal here, and thank you, Chanel, for putting this all together, is to like impart any type of knowledge I can on my journey, and to hopefully, make it easier for entry and kind of like make the bar more accessible.
So now you want to go?
Sure. Yeah.
There we go.
Good morning. I guess I'm on the West Coast, but Jonel, Seon. I am based out of Oakland, California. I am a business development coordinator for a global strategic design firm called Designit. I work primarily with our sales and growth teams on finding opportunities for design work for our studios. That's everything from user research to concept ideation to full-fledged MVPs, and then handing it over to potentially our development partners who kind of help build the products for all of our clients. I've been doing this for about 3 years. I started in user interface design with a smaller agency, and then transitioned over to the global side about a year ago. Really excited to be a part of this discussion, to share my perspective and experience, but also learn from all of you. And then also, to Chanel's point, creating connections for the mentees and this community to be able to reach out to me, and hopefully I can help you on your journey.
Rial, you want to go?
I'm Rial Canty, UXR at Google. I work in the area of privacy, so basically anything that has to do with an alphabet product that has to do with privacy governance, data governance, and also from a consumer side and end user side, anything that has to do with improving the way that the extent to which they're informed about the way that what data Google collects, how those data are being used, and making sure that end users have control over that data is the space that I work in. And so we design internal tools, partner with product teams to define what those experiences are around privacy for end users. I sit in the Sunnyvale office out here in the Bay. And from this, I'm really I want us to crack the code, right? I know that there's an enormous amount of value for people coming from our backgrounds as that we have to offer for these companies. Like, how can we formalize that? How can we improve the success rate of those of us who are coming into the door, knocking on the door, trying to get in? And that's going to take some strategy from within as well as from without, but that's what I'm here for. So it's just about building a network and making myself available to others who are trying to grow in this space.
Felanice, you want to go?
Sure. You sound low though in my ear. So my name is Felanice Yancy, and I was a previous software engineer for Northrop Grumman, but I am a current program manager for Microsoft, and I work in the area of the new Edge browser, and I also work with our data governance and privacy. So the browser is the browser. I don't know like what you guys want me to tell you about that. It's built on Chromium, and so we do partner sometimes with Google to sort of make that browser, even better. Also, the side of privacy, it's when people want to access our data. I basically am the gatekeeper for telling people no or yes, and so there's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot of questions that we need to know as far as like even with internal, like why do you need this data? What are you going to do with the data? What kind of identifiers? Those sorts of things. But I also have a background. I have a security clearance, so privacy sort of like fits with me. I also am finishing up my PhD in data science, so I'm looking to go into that area as well. But part of my D&I initiative at Microsoft is I give back for our LEAP program, and I mentor through the Blacks in Microsoft. And so I'm super excited to just be able to share a lot of my knowledge and to be able to network with a lot of you and, help you, along your journey as well as people have helped me. So thank you, Chanel.
Always welcome. Brittany, you want to go next?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Brittany Hale. I work as an administrative business partner at the Creative Lab in Google. And it's one of those teams where no one really knows that we exist, and they also don't know what we do. But it's basically all the fun and exciting and cool things that Google puts out into the world my team works on. So recently we helped launch the Black Business Google Badge, which if you have a business on Google, you can go ahead and say this is a Black-owned business, which we were really, really excited about. So when people ask, like, what do you do? Things like that. There are so many different things we work on, up until like commercials. We can work on commercials too, so many different things. But in terms of my journey at Google, I was an intern. I was in the Bold Intern program, and then I converted full-time into sales, which I worked on a sales team, and then recruiting, and now I work obviously in the Creative Lab as an admin. So I've been pretty much on the business side of Google, but I'm very familiar with tech, considering that I used to hire tech interns and partner a lot with the people that also hire software engineers. So I'm very, very knowledgeable on the process of how to enter into the tech industry and what it takes. And I was telling everyone on the panel earlier, I started Hayles Consulting, which is my career consulting agency, because the more in depth I go into my career, the more I realize that it's incredibly strategic. Like, you have to be strategic about your career. You cannot do anything without intention. You can't just apply to a job because you feel like it. You can't just wake up and be like, oh, let me just throw some things on my resume because I feel like it. It has to be intentional. It has to be strategic. So I'm really excited to be here because I want to network with everyone and let you know that if you create goals, you can achieve them, but it has to be strategic. Again, you're going to hear me say that word over and over and over again. So thank you, Chanel, for creating this platform, because I didn't have this when I was in college. I didn't have this when I graduated. I didn't have any of it. I've kind of just been learning as I go, which is terrifying. But I'm so happy to share what I have learned with everyone here. So excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, Britt. And honestly, I echo that. It definitely has taken me a while to get to where I am, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we can go ahead and go to B. Are you cool? You want to go next, B?
Yeah, so my name is B. Pagels-Minor. My pronouns are they, them, their. So my day job is I'm a senior data product manager at Netflix. But actually the work that I find most valuable, I'm on the board of directors of Howard Brown Health and YWCA of Metropolitan Chicago, which kind of focus on LGBTQ, Black, women's, and children's issues. And also, most specifically, YWCA's goal is to end racism. So obviously, it's something really great. And so I'm here today primarily because I hope that, like many people did for me in my life, this conversation and the conversation with these people help change the lens for which you think about yourself and think about how you can fit into this world. A lot of times when we first start out, we start thinking, oh, well, people like us don't work there, so we don't want to go apply there. But it turns out there's actually a ton of us who work at these places in lots of different cities. For instance, myself, I'm based in San Jose. Although, to be truthful, the food is terrible. Don't move to San Jose. But you know, the great thing about that is I get to do really, really meaningful work at a very high level at one of the world's most respected companies.
Well, welcome. And then Miss Teneika. I can't hear you. You're on mute, love. Okay,
Hello. My name is Teneika. I am currently at Mozilla heading the People Analytics department. I also, just in my free time, I'm super passionate about providing resources to everyone because I just believe that one of the barriers to success, especially in the minority community, is equal access to opportunities. So you'll see me sharing a lot of resources. That's something that I do because I'm very passionate about it. But I also am super passionate about data and analytics. So that's why I pursued that career path. And I'll talk a little bit about that today and how I transitioned from intern to consultant got to head of people analytics. One of the things that was mentioned earlier is just being strategic. So that's something that we definitely should talk about, and I definitely harp on in the conversations. And Jonel knows that as well, because when we have conversations, sometimes we jump into the conversation with, can you help me get here? And we don't talk about the why you want to go there, what's pushing you, what are you passionate about? Is this really the career you want to be in? And that conversation has to be had for you to understand if you're on the right career path or career trajectory.
I love that. I love that you said that because it's very important. And I'm not sure if I said that earlier, but yeah, I was thinking about doing a whole lot of things. And I mean, from direction from multiple of you guys, I've realized that was not my path. So you definitely want to make sure that you're having those conversations. And even if it is your path, you want to make sure that the timing is right. That's very important as well. You don't want to rush something that you're not prepared to handle. So yeah, the first question I want to talk about is like, what was your first job in tech? How did you know you wanted to get into tech? Like, what was that journey or that navigation? What did that look like? It can be anywhere.
So my first job was actually at IBM as a software engineer or software developer. I was in college and I really loved coding at the time. So I ended up in an internship where basically I just coded all day. And it was really fun and passionate at the time, but then I got my internship extended to a co-op, which was really great because it showed that they really liked me. I was, the candidate for that role, but I found that it just wasn't something I wanted to do in my 9-to-5 every day, all day. And it helped me to see that I needed to find something where I had more interaction with people as well as coding on the technical side. So I did learn in another internship after that that there was consultants or business analysts who work on both ends, and that helped me to see like where I wanted to be. And that internship really helped me to see that. But also one of the instructors in school showed me that there's different ways and different paths to consulting or technical work. And I learned that through a project at school, working hand in hand with an instructor for like 7 weeks. And it was really amazing, really profound. I got to go to a lot of different conferences because of that project. And I met a lot of people who I asked a lot of questions. Where did you start your career? How did you get there? What challenges did you have along the way? And that kind of helped me shape my career.
So pause, everyone. Let's all welcome Shannon. Hi, Shannon.
Hi, Shannon.
Hi. Shannon, you to kind of introduce yourself, and then after you introduce yourself, we're going to talk about how you got started in the field that you are currently in.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Shannon Slocum. I currently work for Nike in the product management department. I oversee a team called the Nike Fit team. We build size and fit technology for our retail spaces that are also 360. We use the data to also improve our product creation. Sorry, I'm late. I clicked on the Google Meet. I was like, why is no one here?
Totally fine. Welcome to the cookout, girl. And then if you can just show us or tell us like how you got started in the field that you're in. I know that you're in, I guess, the industry gap.
Yeah. I went to school for graphic design and a minor in business. And so I started out as a graphic designer. And I don't know how I got my first retail job. I want to say Craigslist, maybe. Yes, it was at a small underwear e-commerce site. So I was there for the first 4 years of my career and made it to be art director, which for a small company, there was no like product management and there was no difference between things. You just kind of did everything. So my first big position came about because I went to a conference, an e-retailer conference through Fresh Pair. And I'm just talking to like this weird lady at lunch in between, sessions. And we had the same coat, and that's how it like sparked a conversation. I get back to New York, the conference was in Florida, and I get this email from Saks Fifth Avenue for a job, and it was the lady. She had never told me like where she worked or anything like that. She was super elusive. So that was my first introduction to Saks, and I've been in retail ever since.
Awesome. What's next? Daniel?
Yeah, I can follow that. I studied computer science in school. And originally, actually, I completely pivoted from what I was originally studying, which was to be involved in film, directing movies. Movies are something that I'm very passionate about, and art in general. But I decided to pivot towards computer science because ultimately I just like to create things, and computer science is kind of this thing in our modern world that allows us to create things and distribute it to millions of people. So I kind of took that path. My first job outside of school actually took me to upstate in the mountains, New York, like the middle of nowhere. Like if I tell you the town, you probably wouldn't recognize it. I worked on a it's called Rome, New York.
I was gonna say, was it Watertown?
No. It was really far up there though. Like I was in the boonies. I was in the Adirondack Mountains. And I worked on a military base out there for a defense contractor. I was up for a security clearance at some point. I ended up not going through with the security clearance mostly because I didn't want that responsibility.
It's not that bad.
I'm offended.
But I did learn a lot there, and I think this goes back to what Brittany was saying on choosing a role with intention, because I had two opportunities. I had an opportunity to kind of work as a ServiceNow engineer, which is a very particular tailored type of engineering, or versus go to the defense contractor, where I would be a for real minority in the business, because one was in Miami, where I was based out of, and another one was in upstate New York. And I chose to go to upstate because it would give me an opportunity to learn full stack engineering, which is ultimately what I wanted to do, because that would allow me to create services that I can distribute to people. I'm sure that we'll have a discussion more about intention, and because I have a lot to say about that. But that was kind of like my first role, and it was interesting because the more that I think about the path to that, the more I realized, you know, I was very much a diversity hire of that company. But my talent is why I ultimately stayed at that company. Why I was ultimately not fired from that company is because I was able to deliver. I was able to deliver consistently. And that opportunity ultimately led me to having the experience to showcase for the New York Times, which is where I'm currently at and where I'm currently contributing my talent to. So yeah, that's pretty much how I ended up here, and I had to reconcile with that fact. But sometimes that might be what gets you in the door, but ultimately your talent is what will make you shine through, I think.
So, does anybody else want to?
I actually, going into college, I was a biology major, and I tell people all the time I ended up in tech. The universe forced me into tech. Like, I didn't necessarily choose it at all. I wanted to be a plastic surgeon my freshman year of college. I had my heart dead set. I was like, I'm the next Dr. Miami. I'm gonna have my own reality television show. I'm out here. Yes. And then I went into my first bio class and I was like, this ain't it.
Like, this ain't the wave.
Yeah.
That's how it be.
Cancel this.
Yeah.
No.
I feel the same way, Brittany. I'm right there with you. My mom wanted me to be a doctor. She's a, I can't even remember the name. Last time I knew, she was like a charge nurse or like the high RN.
Yeah.
I just had all these doctor toys, and I was like, I'm going to be a doctor. I got into college. I went in anatomy and physiology, and I was like,
Oh, no.
That's like,
No.
this ain't it.
Honestly, that happened with me. My mom, one day, she called me into the room, but like, you know how Black people are. They have all their friends there. Come. I come there. My mom is Jamaican, so you know how Jamaicans be.
Yes.
Oh, no.
So I said, okay, so she said, Shannon, tell everyone what you want to be. I said a cowgirl because I was watching the show. And they were, Black horses. Honey, that next day, she went and got me all the doctor toys. You think I'm to America for you make some cowgirl? I went to school for the same thing for medicine, wanted to be a neurosurgeon. So I was going to be the general surgeon of America and all that kind of stuff. And I ended up in tech. So you will be so surprised about backgrounds as well. Does anyone else want to share about their background, how they kind of ended up in this space?
Oh, I can. So you talk about being strategic and you talk about like the whole medical stuff. So there is this part of me that wanted to merge medical and engineering and business ever since I was a kid. Like, I just never wanted to have one thing. I wanted all three of them to be fused. So I was, over the years trying to figure out how do you do that, and so being strategic, every school that I chose, every degree that I chose, I have 4, but everything that I've done has been strategically placed so that I could, force myself into the areas that I wanted to be in. And so I knew I wanted to be an engineer when I was 8. So I, built my first, bridge, and, I had these lights, I had all these cars on it, and it was so cool. And that sparked my interest of just wanting to be an engineer. And so my teachers told me, you probably won't be an engineer because you're a Black girl. You're not, like, it's a boys' world. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I don't even understand. Like, I painted my cars pink. Clearly, guys they don't need to ride in my car. They're pink and purple, And so that was very devastating for me. But nevertheless, I used it to propel me forward. So the high school that I chose, math and science, I'm originally from Chicago. And so then it was like, hey, you can't be an engineer. I was in Junior Engineers for Today's Society. So everything that I've done has been, I would always, select something that would give me that spark, that would give me some sort of knowledge to go into engineering. And when I went to school, same thing, it was like, you can't be an engineer, you should just drop out. And I actually went to school in Chicago, and I had a dean that told me to drop out. I was devastated because I had to work. My family was poor, so I had to work and go to school. And so my grades did not reflect that, which, they should have, And so she told me to defer to like biology. So to that defense, I was actually got a degree in biology. And so I'm laughing at you guys and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I literally was an electrical and computer engineering major, got a degree in biology, and then sideswiped back over and got a degree in computer information systems. And then from there just went on, you know, and continued on. So it was interesting because my first job was like in college, like a freshman in college, and I was like teaching computer science to like high school kids. And to now see all of those kids be engineers now is so amazing to see. So you never really know how your path is going to go. But I had a really interesting, like there's my critical path was like, it was like, yeah, it was like playing domino. So I would say, don't let the straight path or like that, you know, you think that path is supposed to be super short. My path was so crazy and arduous and tumultuous and just crazy. But nevertheless, you know, the journey along the way, when I look back, has given me the knowledge that I have today. But tech almost took my soul. That's all I can say. It was hard.
Well, and I want to add to that, I think, a little bit. It's actually really funny to me because I went to college for history and political science, and because I was going to be an attorney. In fact, if you ask me, even today, I will tell you, I really just wanted to be Claire Huxtable, right? Like that was like my number one goal. I'm gonna be Claire Huxtable. I'm gonna be so smart. You know, I'm gonna be like bomb, all this other good stuff. And so I also mentioned that because like I actually was in law school and I decided to drop out of law school because there was such a cool tech opportunity. And I was like, you know, and I had like this super come to Jesus moment, right? I called my mom, you know, I was calling like, you know, people being like, hey, like, is it weird that I want to drop out of law school, like the path that people feel very comfortable with, to go take this tech job that is no guarantee that it's going to lead to anything, right? And they were like, honestly, all you talk about is technology. And so one of the things that I always take from that experience is that you kind of have to hold a mirror up to yourself and say, like, what actually makes you happy? Like, I actually, you know, I was doing well, right? Like I was doing well, you know, in law school. I had a lot of opportunities to like get the right internships to land the right gig afterwards. But like, honestly, if I had to write one more brief about anything, I probably would have like smacked someone, not myself. I don't self-harm, but I would have smacked someone else because it was so boring to me. And so actually switching over to that tech job, which was like a business analyst at a marketing agency, helping them build like their software products, ended up being the foundational experiences kind of like launched my career because they knew everybody. So like I got to work with like these huge brands and be very valuable to them. And so then they kept giving me more opportunities. And that's really what kind of changed the whole trajectory for me. And so it wasn't even really and I wanted to highlight that because I was winning. And then what I did made people think that I was losing, who didn't really understand me. But the reality is that it just actually supercharged my ability to win more. And so that's one of the things that I love most about how my career trajectory has changed.
What about you guys? Anyone else want to share?
Yeah, I think, you know, for me, a big part of this and growing into whatever it is that you do is about knowing yourself, right? And so just listening to other people's accounts, a lot of it is, you know, you think that it's about one thing, and then when people start questioning you or holding a lens up to you, it's really like, no, who are you, and what really resonates with you the most? Like, and as I matured in my growth, I've looked beyond some of the formal training, right? And so we talk a lot about the formal training that got us here, but also there's some of those early childhood experiences. All of that's important for seeding, you know, the identity and supporting the identity that we are. And so for me, you know, I was always, when I was young and coming up, we used to always talk about, you know, we used to study ourselves. We knew, you know, we were studying culture, and we were calling ourselves scientists. And, you know, we were already doing this before I went to school. I read this book called The Living Planet by David Attenborough. And in that book, he was talking about, there was this group of people in South America who live at a certain elevation on a mountain. And he was talking about how their lungs adapted, to that elevation. Normally you couldn't live at that elevation, but over time they had adapted, their lungs adapted the capacity to process the air and live. And that drew me in. I knew immediately then that, okay, if we're calling ourselves scientists out here, I'm actually going to go to school and become a scientist. And so initially I was going to be a marine biologist. So again, is that biology component, that I was going to be a marine biologist. And I had an opportunity one summer. I go to UCal San Diego and I can do a research program for marine biology, or I go to UCLA and I do psychology. And at UCLA at the time, there was this young faculty member, it was a Black faculty member. And I needed that. I needed that. I wanted to know where we are in academia, what we're doing, what's that experience like. And when I went out there for that, I chose a psych route. And when I went to UCLA, it was just this, I saw that I could actually make a living being curious, answering questions, solving problems, identifying and defining the problem spaces that I was going to solve for. And that was it. That's all I needed to know, that I was going to be doing science. Now, the other part of my experience that comes in is being young, coming up in a primarily Black, some Puerto Rican neighborhood, and going to school and getting to the schools, it's primarily Black and Puerto Rican, but in the AP and the honors courses, that's mostly white, right? So I was a minority in the AP and the honors courses in the school. And so then listening to these other kids, they would go home and they'd be able to talk about, calculus with their older siblings or their parents, or they'd study together because they lived together. But, I didn't have anybody around me to say, hey, let's talk calc, right? And once I got into school, the psychology clicked, because at that point I had a problem that I wanted to solve. I wanted to redesign educational technology, and design learning environments, learning experiences that would help promote mathematics and science reasoning amongst us, right? And so I had this vision, this superhero vision of being a scientist. And I'd go to conferences, because when I went to conferences, I'd be the only one at the conference. And every time I'd extend myself to some faculty member whose work I respected, they always kind of like, what are you doing here, kid? But they'd open arms for everybody else. And so I started having these superhero visions where it was just, I was going to have a bunch of young junior scientists. We'd go to these conferences. We'd be solving problems around ed tech for us. And we get to the conferences, and of course, at any time people see a group of us, they immediately start to gravitate over, and they want to be a part of it. And I just imagine us being in this space, and it didn't quite work like that. But I did have the opportunity to, once I got into grad school, where I focused on cognitive psychology, and it was really about designing those learning experiences. I was fortunate because even then I was already working with publishing companies who had curriculum design companies, and we were trying to figure out, how do we design, how do we get away from whatever these people are doing today, right? I'm working with people who are like 30, 40 years in. They're at the end of their careers, they're getting 200, 300,000 checks for these lifetime achievement awards for supposedly making advances in education, right? In educational design. But when I look at where I come from and the neighborhoods that are like where I come from, I didn't see any impact. So I didn't get it, right? So I knew that all of this stuff that they're talking, it's not effective, and I wasn't impressed by it. And so I wanted to redesign the way that we learn math, redesign the way that we learn science concepts by going into our communities and asking the question of, how do we already think about proportion? How do we already think about ratio? How do we already think about velocity and speed in an everyday language and through everyday experiences, and totally redesign what curricula look like, the way that we teach, the way that we approach education and learning in. And I realized that systemically, it was too problematic for me to solve with a single approach. But I continue to focus on building from the standpoint of who it is that we're designing for, that we're building for, understanding that in order for us to be effective, there's going to be some disruption. Although at that point, I didn't call it disruption. I just knew that we needed a dramatic change. And from there, first thing I did was I started my own, it was a startup. It was a second generation iPads came out, and we started designing learning apps for toddlers. And so that introduced me to, I had a product manager in one of the founders. I had software engineer, and I had another designer. And that really introduced me to this entirely different space than academia and science. And that's how I knew that I'd be able to apply what I was doing in tech, and more specifically in the industry, right? Coming into industry. And from there, the next thing I did, I knew that I was weak in the kind of ethnographic research, qualitative, contextual research. And I started a design research studio that enabled me to handpick the problems that I was going to solve, such that I'd be able to actually build up the skill set where I was weak, right? And then by doing that, eventually I just got a call from AT&T, went to AT&T, helped them stand up this team, the design technology group in Dallas. And it's been great ever since. And there's so many opportunities in this space. I certainly see it, so.
No, we can't hear you.
Oh, y'all can't hear me? Hello?
Now we can.
Now we can.
Yeah.
Hey, y'all. Thank you so much for sharing. This space is definitely very lucrative. I tell my mentees all the time that if you really want job security, you need to go into tech now. We stop, like Brittany was saying earlier, just knowing that having that confidence to know that you deserve a seat at the table, a spot in the company, you know what I mean? And I don't just say a spot because we need to take up that space as we are in the space. But yeah, so for me, I guess the question that I would love to ask you all, as you all enter the space, right? What are some things that you wish you knew? So, you can even name maybe like 2 or 3, but you enter the space, you're like, boom, I'm here. What are some things that you definitely said, man, I wish I would have known? And what are some things that you said, I'm grateful that I do know now, or like that I knew back then? Maybe like soft skills, technical skills. You guys can kind of pick and choose from that question. I know it's a little loaded, but yeah.
One thing I really wish I knew, finding someone what the difference was between a mentor, sponsor, an ally. I didn't know how important that was. I was just, at first, because I wasn't taught any of that throughout college or through my internships. But when I got into my first full-time role, I reached out to a principal like 2 weeks into my job, because when I was recruited at Thurgood Marshall College Fund, she was one of the individuals who was there, who I heard about, talked about a lot, but I didn't really establish that mentor-mentee relationship because I didn't know how to do it. So I wish I knew more about how to establish that, instead of just like having conversations here and there, but how to actually form that relationship with individuals, be consistent, knowing that mentoring is a two-way street. And a sponsor is actually someone who may not, mentor you, or they may be a mentor, but they're that person that's going to speak up for you when you're not in the room. I wish I had knew how to acquire those individuals on my personal board of directors when I first got into the field, because I struggled with the small things, soft skills, and I could deliver work, but being a consultant, I learned that I could build rapport very quickly because I was in retail for a long time, but there's a certain way that you have to deliver work and build relationships, because your clients don't see you, they see the company. And so I built great relationships with my clients, but also at one point, my clients will only ask for me for certain things, or they would specifically want me to be in certain meetings, and it couldn't be that way when, it should be Booz Allen, not Teneika. So I had to learn the hard way about that. But it took a while for me to build a relationship with my mentor, and she actually was able to get that advice because she was so high up, and funnel it down to me. If I hadn't built that relationship earlier, or let her know earlier, that I wanted that relationship, I think I could have got that feedback before it hit my performance cycle.
I would say,
Yeah,
I don't know who.
I was gonna go, but it's okay. You could go, and I'll go after you.
I would say the biggest, mine's short. I would say the biggest thing that I wish I knew was that it's so important to be present. You have to be present. I remember on my first performance review, my manager was like, "You're doing amazing. You're actually like within the top 20 within the entire country in terms of sales, but I never see you. I literally never see you on the floor. I never see you actually working." And you're going to find in your career that there's people who are going to get promoted, who are going to get raises, who are going to get praise. And their work is not stellar. It's just because they're present. Like people can see them working. And it's unfortunate, but it's a reality. And sometimes as Black people, our parents are like, be seen, not necessarily heard. And we don't really, don't get told to put ourselves in to present ourselves and to promote ourselves. But in a workspace, you have to do that because you're going to miss out on those promotions and those raises and those accolades if you're not. And I'm so happy that I had a great manager who was willing to tell me that, but I didn't know that going into it, and it could have really hurt me. So I really encourage people to be present because there are people who are going to get rewarded just for being present, not necessarily because they're good. And I don't want that to happen.
To add to what you're saying, which is so amazing, but I would say what I learned, and I'm grateful for it, is that it's okay to be myself. I think that when you first come into tech, there's this, ideology that you should, act like a white person, or you should talk a certain way, or that you have to be timid, or, you can't say much, or someone's, challenging you. And so I learned to just be me, authentically who I was and how I speak. My family's from the South. This is what it is. I didn't have to alter who I was. And at the same time, learning to just adjust. I was, at work and I had a celebrity mother-in-law, and that was very challenging for me. And so trying to adjust to work and trying to accept her lifestyle, and that she would pop up and I would have all these random things that would happen in my life, and still being myself was also this challenge of, this is me in tech, this is who I am, this is how I speak, this is what I do, and you just have to live with that, and learning to just be present and speaking up in meetings and having a voice. I think that as a woman, sometimes there's this, idea that, you shouldn't really say much, you just sit and listen to the meetings. And I learned to tell people no. I used to take everything on at the beginning. And I would have, like, as a junior software engineer, I had like 16 responsibilities. It was ridiculous because I felt like I had to take everything on. And so even now in my space at Microsoft, even though I'm not new, but I'm still, young in my career there, I tell people no. People try to push things on me. I go, thank you for the opportunity. That is great. But however, what would you like for me to give up? I have like 7 other things that I'm working on. And so then when I put that back on them, there's this thing like, okay, well, she's not a pushover. And so just being able to tell people no, and being able to, even sometimes in a privacy space, people want stuff and they like, I want this now. Like, I work on this team and I should have this. And I'm like, yeah, but did you go through my process? No, you didn't. So I want to see you back to that.
I echo that wholeheartedly. Like the whole idea of like taking initiative, but also understanding what you can get done, because ultimately, people will see what you deliver. You know what I mean? So having those communication skills to say, you know what, let's not do that. Let's table that for now. Let's come back to that after we finish this first goal that we need to achieve. I think one of the biggest things that I wish I had learned was how to break things down into sizable chunks in which the work is actually getting done. Because we all, sometimes we have these ideas and we think of the end result before we think of the steps that need to be taken to get to that end result, right? And I think that just comes with, like a level of experience and kind of like going through the work and understanding how long things take. But, one, taking the initiative, speaking up, and communicating that initiative to the people around you. Like Like there's that one poem, you know, like the "What is your deepest fear" poem. You know, you shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure doesn't do anything for the world, right? So take that initiative, but understand that there's steps and there's process to getting things done, and try and break that down. Try and go in with that already in your mind, right? And you will always impress people. I can assure you of that. That's something that I've learned and something that I've employed in my normal everyday career that that's really helped me both inside and outside of work, getting things done in general and shining through with that.
So for me, you know, it's really interesting. So there's 3 things that I wish I knew, and this is what I tell everyone else as well. First, find a teacher. Second, be very loud about your accomplishments. And third, if you are the minority in the organization, find someone from the majority to be your champion. And so what does that really mean, right? So when it comes to finding a teacher, no matter what level you are in your career, when you enter a new workspace, you don't know enough about the culture, the skeletons, all those different things to actually accurately do your job, right? So you need to find someone who's like an expert at that business, or expert at your role within that business, or expert generally at that role, who can help teach you the types of things that you should know to be able to be very successful in it, right? You know, in my current organization, I have 2 or 3 people who I call teachers. Like one person's helping me learn about, you know, specifically Netflix. One person is helping me learn about my area of the business. Another person is helping me learn how we want to do product at, you know, Netflix, right? And so because of that, all 3 of those people are people I can go to and very specifically, you know, ask very pointed questions to ensure that like I never show up in the wrong way, in the wrong space, right? And so that's something that's very important. It's not so much that if you show up wrong once, you're going to get fired. It's just that you're building every day towards like this ability to be very authoritative, very successful, right? And so you don't really want to have a misstep when you could have avoided it, right? So that's the first thing. Secondly, when I say be very loud about your accomplishments, so many people, I mean, like I was one of my team members, she did something in her first 4 months that no one had ever been able to accomplish at this company. And like, she was just like, oh, it's no big deal. It was only this many lines of code. I was like, girl, this company's been around for 20 years and they've never been able to retire this freaking table. You better be loud, right? You know, because like, if you're not going to gas yourself up, who the heck will? And then most importantly, once she actually celebrated it, everyone else was just like, whoa, I didn't realize you were working on that. And so then all the accolades came in, and now she's going to be presenting at another very huge forum that's going to give her the ability to be in the right space to, you know, to have the right type of recognition. And so that's something you have to think about, like, especially if you have any ambition, like, and I assume that all of us at the very least, our ambition is to get paid more. Right. So even if that's as little as it is, the way you get paid more is when people know that you've done work that's valuable. And so they want to give you that next title, that next raise and things like that. So make sure you're very loud. And then lastly, this idea of a champion. So I've actually worked at companies with like some seriously toxic cultures. And one of the things that I realized very quickly is that the words that are coming out of my mouth right now, like, and I think most people, if you kind of like listen to me, I'm like literally like the most chill, calm, cool person in the world. Like I literally never get angry or anything like that. But in some of those spaces, you know, the classic angry Black woman trope would come out, and I would still be talking in this exact tone, like, and not raising my voice, and they'd be like, well, B seems angry. And I'm like, honestly, I have never been angry at work because I don't care about y'all. But that's just a whole nother point. So I would actually go out and find like some of my coworkers who were part of the majority group. And I was like, can you come to this meeting? I was like, so this dude always says like really negative stuff or tries to undermine me. And what I want you to do is every time this person does that thing, I want you to just say the same thing I said again. And then say that B said this. So, and I'm just reiterating that I agree with this thing. And it almost always would neutralize their ability to try to undermine and hurt my success at that organization. And so you do have to find these champions, right? And sometimes, you know, it's kind of difficult, right? Because it'll be the first time you might, like, they've ever been asked to step up in this way. But, you know, what I always tell people is I'm just trying to help you be a better whatever you are, right? If you're my director, I'm trying to help you actually do your job effectively, right? And so that's why you get to come to this meeting and actually do your job so that we can actually be successful. And so then, you're really just kind of forcing, and the other thing about that is it's a forcing function for it to shine the light on the kind of disparities that can exist from a very low-key perspective that a lot of people often ignore.
I would add on to, sorry, I would add on to that about, coming in the room and being seen as the angry Black woman. I would say about everything that we're saying, I wish somebody would have told me how emotionally draining that all of this can get and that it is okay to admit that to yourself and do something about that. I think that when it does come to the concept of strength, like we also internalize that we can never show that this is bothering me, or I have to always be strategic in order to work around this. And I do think, and I've noticed this in my own career, I think sometimes that does come off as stoic and unhuman, not only to white people, but other Black people, looking up to you as like leaders and things like that. Like I have to be like this perfect image of perfection all the time and completely seem unbothered, and I don't know how to do that. So I definitely wish someone would have told me, like, it's okay. Like, it's not okay that you have to find a white person to repeat what you just said. That's not okay. And it's okay for you to like deal with those emotions and like take some time out of the space if you need to and things like that.
Yeah, I find it in those spaces where especially where there's a lot of misrepresentation. So, the act of you just being you, and then they'll try to misrepresent that as something else. For me, it's taking those behaviors, those inferences that people are making, and in the moment, correcting them. So saying things like, that's unfair, like letting them know that what you're doing is unfair, saying that, no, that's unfair, or you're misinterpreting my tone, which would be more effective. I need you to just focus on what I'm saying. So ignore the tone, focus on what I'm saying right now, because clearly you're misinterpreting the signals. So putting them in a space where they're the ones that have to make the correction is important. It also lets them know that you're aware of how their behaviors might impact you. A lot of times what happens when we get in these spaces, is these things get done against us, right? And we just hold it. We walk away, we hold it, we carry it. But things like reputation and wordom, all of that stuff, reputation's important, and they can be career killers. And so it's not the fact that if we come from backgrounds where, if there's an issue, you're going to fight about it, right? Or, we see people, losing their lives. When we think about livelihood in life, we think about threats on that level. Like, oh, no, you're not, look, I don't care enough to get angry because you're not taking my life. However, you have to be aware, and to the point that that somebody is actually throwing harm and inflicting harm that may impact the life of your career, right? And that's what you have to learn. We have to learn how to defend. And I've had to learn that when I came in, just into any of these institutional spaces where I'm thinking initially in my head, because I value thinking and reasoning and critical skills, and I'm coming into these spaces thinking because these people have this knowledge about these things that I want to acquire, that somehow they're more morally, they're more morally balanced, than some of the things that I'm experiencing. And actually that's not the case. Really, we're just dealing with different knowledge systems. And so I was just learning in a different knowledge system, because I've always valued the knowledge systems from where I was rooted. Let me add on that. For me, three things I think that also overlap with what's already been said. When we talk about presence, it's visibility, right? It's knowing that when you are in a space, it's not enough to be technically savvy. Right? That's good. And in fact, as a researcher, I had to learn. I've conducted, when I first came in, I was doing research that among researchers, they looked at it and they gave me a lot of props for the quality of the work that I was doing. But I wasn't making an impact, right? So there was very, very little impact on what I was doing. That was actually preventing some of the visibility opportunities that I had to be visible, because although I did good research, ultimately at the end of the day, it's my research has to have an impact on product decisions. right? And so I had to learn, now talking about what that relates to is stakeholder management, right? And moving into these spaces and knowing that it's not only about me being a good researcher or me being a good designer. It's knowing that I need to learn how to think like a product manager. I need to learn how to think like an engineer. I should think like a director, right? Because if I can understand the mental models, like the way that what their expectations are for success, what they expect to do from handing over something to them, what are your goals with this? What do you want to achieve? Understanding like all of that, all of those sets of expectations that they have for their own success in their relationship with me. By understanding that, I can actually do my job in a way that not only satisfies my own intrinsic interests, but also more importantly, has an impact. It's something that people can take and they can make action. It's actionable, right? And that's important. You got to learn how to work with different people. And it's not just getting along with them. It's understanding how they think so that you can be more directional in the interactions and intentional in your interactions with these people.
I completely agree with that. And, you know, coming from a user experience background, like I always think of my peers and, you know, my cross-departmental partners as part of that user group, because companies always make these like broad statements, like we care about people, not just profits, and like all of these sorts of things. But that only plays out as well as the people in the company and how they, and their motivations, essentially. There's a filter that you have to get through. Everybody thinks that they're doing the right thing for the end user, right? But everybody's doing something different. Somebody's wrong or somebody's thinking about it differently. So you really have to like almost think of them as users. Like, let me break down their mindset and get through that filter so that I can get to the actual user.
Yes.
And then in connection to what I think everybody has said, I think it's so important that people ask themselves, what do I want my personal brand to be? And when you ask yourself about what do you want your personal brand to be, that's not what do I want that's not considering what people think of you. No, that is what do I want to be known for? So when I first started at Adidas, I told myself I was nervous, I was shy, I was a recluse, I wanted to sit in the corner, but I told myself I wanted to be known as the person who came into the room and challenged the status quo. Even if it was just asking one question, I wanted to challenge. So on my first day, I sat with the president of our company in a coffee scenario where there were 30 of us. And I asked him and I said, what do we do to drive diversity what do we do to drive diversity and inclusion outside of recruitment? And he didn't have an answer. And from there, we built and we built and we built. But for me, that was in my moment, I said to myself, I want to be known as the person in this company who challenges the status quo, who challenges the things that we do. So I think that that's so important for people who are starting their career to ask themselves, like, what is my professional brand? No, not what does everyone think of me? That doesn't matter necessarily. But what is my professional brand? What do I want to be known for? And then you can take it from there.
And if I can really quick, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I agree with that. I think when I think about my path in terms of the career choices I've made, I think to that point, like, yeah, what is your brand? And I think it's that when you're going in with an employer, it's a two-way street. It's a transaction. So I'm bringing something to this organization that's going to benefit you that you may not be able to accomplish right now, as well as it is employment for me and for all of us, you know. So I think it's having that understanding. A mentor of mine said to me, there are two types of people in an organization: those who sell and those who make. And so I've found myself being on the side of who sells, and then, you know, the people that I work with are the makers. And so my job is to help create opportunities for them to make. And I would also add to that that the points around this that your experience is valid. Like, there's no straight line to all of this. Like, this is my second career pivot. So for the first 10 years of my career, I worked in education, academia, public sector work, and decided, hey, I wanted to be a designer. I want to work with designers. So I applied for a job in UX because I live in the Bay Area, and because Bay Area has so many organizations focused on technology and it's a growing sector, I was like, this is where I'm going to make my entry point to design. I had no design experience formally. I'm a humanities student. I got an MBA, so I'm like nowhere in the design field. And it was a gamble for, you know, my first employer when they hired me. They're like, this guy has no experience in design, but we have a feeling that he can actually provide value here, and it's through his experience, like the way he sees the world, the way that he's been able to kind of dabble in all of these other sectors. I'm master of none, but that makes me an asset to this organization, because a lot of people come with this formal training and they think that that's what's going to make them successful. But it's like, no, your whole experience is what makes you unique and makes the organization kind of tick. So I would say, like, the thing I've learned is, like, every experience is valid, professionally, personally. I think we've all said that in this conversation with, you know, how we came into this work. But for the mentees, like, think about everything that you've done in your life. Like Real was saying, stuff that you've done as a young person, like, all of those things contribute to what you can add to an organization. Like, I remember making t-shirts when I was a kid, and that's how I got into design. Was like, I used to graffiti backpacks in high school and people would pay me to do that. And like, I didn't even think about that. Like, oh, this was all paying forward the 10,000 hours of mastery that got me to this career point in my life. And so really take advantage of, like, really honor where you come from and the things that you've done, and like your journey as a, I would say it's equity, and the equity that you built through those experiences is the equity that people are trying to invest in when they hire you. So you, like, bring that all to the table, and like don't dim that light. So that's just the things that I've kind of like learned in that.
If I can just add. So one of the, I was just going to say one quick thing, because one of the questions we're going to have later is about like what, you know, what kind of advice you would give to get to, like, my career. And what he just said is very powerful, right? Because, like, I am a history, political science, law school, sales, marketing person who now, you know, runs large scale data products. It don't make no sense, right? But the reality is that's like having all of those experiences. When I go into a room and some finance person is talking all the gibbity gob that they talk about, I'm just like, but that don't make sense, because you just need money. And they'll be like, oh, wait, B, you're right. Like, I'm trying to talk about all these other things and blah, 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 blah. And you're just like, we need money. And I was like, exactly. So, like, let's only focus on that thing. And so sometimes it seems like, you know, you might feel like you're unsophisticated. But the reality is also, like, I think sometimes as a Black person and also as a trans person, like, my lens is very simple. Like, I'm not trying to be like highfalutin. I'm just trying to think about, like, what is the thing that creates the least cognitive load for myself, the least cognitive load for my users, the least cognitive load for my team. And I just want to cut through all of that BS so that we can just get to the most successful part of that. So, and the great thing about that is that you do that with your experience.
Exactly. And I mean, from what everybody is saying, I mean, it sounds like, you know, like a big driver of kind of like why we do what we do is, you know, stems from like our values, you know, and something that I always stress is to know those values, write those values down, arrange them in a hierarchy, you know what I mean? Know what your top values are, because ultimately those values are going to contribute to what your North Star goals are, you know, and that's going to serve to have a hand in every decision you make. Because if you know if you know your North Star goals, every single decision that you make is going to fall under those goals and align with those goals and align with your purpose. You know, we all have zigzag ways of kind of how we got to where we are, but I think one thing that rings true is that, you know, we all ultimately had a goal, right? We all have the values that we value, and that's why, you know, we work as hard as we do. We work with intention like we do. I think like that's probably the most important thing, at least to me personally. And I think like that's an intrinsic piece of success and any means, because how can you be successful if you haven't defined success for yourself?
So yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I think the next thing that I would personally love for us to go into is about resources, right? It's very important.
We've all like delved into them at some point of our careers, and maybe like we hold true to a couple of them as well. So obviously throughout your journey, I can imagine that you have discovered some really great ones along the way. And so what would you suggest mentees kind of involve themselves in early on? And then maybe even like towards the journey within their career as well. So like Slack groups, reading material, professional groups, maybe societies. What have you guys kind of joined in?
Yeah, so did we meet on GroupMe or Slack? I don't remember.
Yeah, so GroupMe, Slack, whatever you guys use. Twitter, I know you're a Twitter, you turned up on Twitter.
I started on GroupMe and it just like grew from there. That is a really great way to network. GroupMe, you'll get in one group, ask people if they're in other groups.
Yeah, there's a lot of feedback on this mic.
Oh, sorry, I was saying if you're in like join a GroupMe.
Wait, do y'all still hear that feedback?
Yeah.
Hear me?
Try again.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
No,
It's only when you unmute yourself, that's when you hear that feedback. Sorry.
So Teneika, I had to restart to get my feedback, so maybe you should do the same.
This is why I use Microsoft Teams.
I cannot.
The plug. And she got the shirt on to let you know. Now, I was gonna say like, early on, I think now that we're in this virtual setting where we're all remote, I think the Slack, like where are the Black designers? That's how I met you, Chanel. IG, I think I've had some of your mentees holler at me on IG, like just like, hey, would you like be down to talk? LinkedIn is always a great resource. I think one of the tools I learned was informational interviews, like reaching out to somebody, you see that they do something that you're interested in, send them a note, be like, hey, I would love to like grab coffee. I mean, you can't grab coffee now, but if you, early on, I would just reach out to folks and be like, hey, I want to learn about what you do. And I want to tell you a little bit about what I'm interested in doing. And maybe there's some alignment. And that's literally how I got my first job out of grad school, was someone I sat down with. I started talking about what I'm doing. They were in Boston. I was in the Bay. And they were like, funny enough, I have a job opening. It's in Boston, but we're willing to make that position available in San Francisco out of our office there. And that's how I got an opportunity. So I think it's taking those opportunities, reaching out to people like ourselves on this conversation and saying, hey, I'd love to learn a little bit more and have an in-depth conversation with you, and maybe something comes out of that.
But Jonel, I think that's such a good point that you say, because I'll just give props to Chanel right now. I met Chanel on LinkedIn, but because of very specific message, because I just never check my messages. And the one day I did check, she said, I see you and I appreciate you. And I'd never heard that from someone I'd never met before. So in that moment, I was immediately intrigued. I think it's very important how you reach out to someone on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. I think that's the key part. And Chanel, you touched my heart that day, because I was like, who is this person who sees me who I've never met before?
Right.
And then that's what made me so intrigued to talk to you more. And now I feel so fortunate that I've gotten this opportunity, and I've met you, and you've taught me so much in the little that we've interacted. So I think it's so important when you are reaching out to those on LinkedIn, it's how you do it, not just necessarily doing it.
I'll plus one that.
Plus one.
I'll plus one that.
Do you teach them that? Are you teaching them the art of networking on LinkedIn?
That's a great question.
We should do a class. We should do a master class.
What society is that?
That is the whole thing.
Yeah. So a part of the program is really helping them to understand how to reach out, right? First of all, even B gave me some really awesome feedback in regards to how to reach out, how to be direct, know what you want, don't beat around the bush, obviously, because all of us, we have things to do. so many tasks during the day, but also being genuine, right? Like, hey, I'm so-and-so. This is what I am. Like, this is what I would like to be. This is how many years I have of experience in the industry. I'm looking at these X, Y, and Z roles. Would you be open to connecting with me for 15 minutes? You know, Chanel's told me that you're an awesome resource to connect with. Something as simple as that. And even down to the timeline, which B gave me some awesome feedback about that. Because some folks...
Can we get some office hours? Do you know my inbox? I get like 50 to 100 people a week that want to connect. And I'm like, I don't have 50 to 100 hours to give you. You 15 minutes and I'm done. I'm checked out. Microsoft takes my brain for the week. How can I help you?
And anytime over like 20 minutes, you started thinking like, what do they want to talk about?
What do you want? Why do I feel like you kidnapped me? Cut it out. So
and one quick thing there. So actually, I just added a book in the chat for both the panelists and the attendees. So what Chanel is like. So yesterday, Chanel and I met, and I gave Chanel this feedback because I was like, your mentees are really great, but like it's very difficult for me to assign a certain priority to how I should discuss things with them. And this book is actually the advice I gave Chanel. Is I got it from this book, and I don't normally like promote a super like white lady, but Kelly Hoey actually she really figured out this game. And I was at a conference. She and I talked, and I told her I was struggling because so many people wanted my attention. And my problem is I'm also, married. I'm also like this person who has this career, and I was trying to figure out how to gracefully tell people you're wasting my time, right? And this book was really, really, really helpful because it means that like, even like if you send it to a certain email I have, so I have my like more business mentoring email, you get an auto reply back being like, hey, B is very busy being successful in life. These are the things you need to do. So respond back to this message with A, B, C, D. And if you do that, then I will go forward and send you my, Calendly link for the appropriate amount of time to have a discussion with you. And then each day I only allow, so it's in the book. It's called How to Make Your Dream Network. Right?
Wait, can you make like B? I need you. I need an offline. I need an offline.
So set up an auto reply.
Yeah. And the thing about that is that like all of us, especially from this panel, but also anyone who does respond to these messages, all we really want to do is make you successful. Right. But the problem is so many people just, and this goes back to this idea of having a teacher, right? So many people just have not been taught. Like for instance, I can't tell you how many messages I get that are so anxiety ridden, and it's like they've written everything that they've ever thought could possibly like champion them for something, and it's like 15 pages. Yeah. And I'm like, honey, all you have to tell me is you're black. And I'm like, I don't respond to you.
Help me. I'm black. Help me. I'm black and I'm in college.
You do need to have your like key points. Like when you messaging somebody on LinkedIn, like why are you messaging me? Did you look up the company? What do you want? Like what's the ask? Like you need to have those 3 straightforward points so I know what I'm reading, because even as a recruiter working with recruiters, they're gonna skim. So if you're sending them a paragraph, next, okay, I ain't got time. Like
have an agenda.
Be
consistent. I'll create a blog post. People. Yeah.
Wait, B, but I need your help. We gonna have to talk offline because Phil has to get her life.
I mean, most of us have like.
So yesterday we said something very specific. Can you hear me? Can y'all hear me? And I'll come right back to you, Daniel. We talked about having a limited cognitive attention or ability, right, to really focus on less or more than 5 or 15 minutes, depending on if you have gotten to the point just yet. So in order to be more efficient in her time in planning out those talks, and then also obviously for you, making sure that she knows like what people she even wants to connect you with, even you're even supposed to be at Netflix. We talked about like even understanding what that looks like. Be straightforward, be direct. I tell my mentees all the time, they don't want to see no paragraph, no story. We don't have time to read all of that. And honestly, like Philly said, just say, hi, I'm the so-and-so. Once we see your picture, we know you're black. We're already sold. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? It's already for the culture. So know that we're here to build you up. We're here to make sure that you do get to your next level of greatness, but just make sure that you're being cognizant of also the things that they have to do as well. And I know, Daniel, you have something else you wanted to say.
Well, let me do one quick coaching. Let me do one good coaching moment, Daniel. So Chanel, one more thing. My pronouns are they, them, there. So folks who are listening right now, coach in the moment.
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
And most of us,
thank you.
Most of us have things that we do outside of work. You know what I mean? Like most of us have extra work, business endeavors. You know what I mean? We do things like this. I personally, I try to be a champion for some of like the lesser privileged socioeconomic status students coming through. You know what I mean? As well as build my own business. So when we talk about like our limited time is just how it is. You know what I mean? Like we stretch ourselves pretty thin because we all have this ambition. So I absolutely echo everybody that's saying, come be direct. We're more than willing to help in any way that we can. It's just like everyone, I also get like dozens every single week. I get dozens of emails and LinkedIn messages like every single week, and just to go back to, the message that Chanel sent me, you know what I mean? Like that, it really stood out to me, you know what I mean? Because I hadn't seen that before. I hadn't seen like an appreciation before like that. And I was just blown away. But in general, I was like, oh, now I want to talk to you. like let's chat.
Honestly, utilizing the culture. I'm sorry, go ahead, Brittany.
Yeah, I was going to say something I want to add that I shouldn't say no one, a lot of people don't focus on is networking in non-professional settings. Because if you're intentional, like that week, you're like, I need a new job immediately. If you put that out into the air, you can go into a coffee shop. If you're just feeling great that day, you can meet somebody who potentially works at a company that you want to work at. And I think a lot of people don't talk about the idea of being a great communicator in non-professional settings, like being open to meeting new people, because there have been so many times where I've met people in the most strange places who have helped me in my career, who have brought me clients. And sometimes I think we get so focused on like networking on LinkedIn or through email or Facebook or whatever it is. Like we're out in the world, we're surrounded by people who have networks, and for whatever reason, we just want to walk with our heads down. Like there's so many people around you to meet, so leverage them as well and build conversations and have conversations with random people because you never know who they are.
And then also don't focus on people who are like above you. So Issa Rae talked about the fact that the people who have supported her and helped her most in her career are actually her peers. That when she first started out, she was like, oh, I'm going to go try and talk to this director, this producer, this very high level person. But it didn't really work out. But when she actually started networking for her peers and starting to gas up her peers, and her peers started gassing her up, that's when she actually got the majority of the traction that she needed in order to be very successful. And I would also, agree with that. A lot of the people who have referred me to roles or connected me to the right person is just someone else who is at the same title of me. One of my favorite situations was someone who's actually just an admin. So she was an admin. She was literally the person who would, when you walked into the door at this company, you talked to her. And so it's the person that you would normally dismiss. But she and I happened to be in the same space. I had a conversation with her and she was like, yeah, like my company is looking for a product manager and you seem really cool. Like you seem like you have the same qualities they're looking for. And she literally, she funneled me right into the chief people officer. And I got a LinkedIn message from the chief people officer saying that, this person was so impressed with you, would you be interested? And so that was one of the biggest career jumps in my life, but it came from someone that a lot of people would often dismiss.
Which goes to the point of never, ever treat anybody different. My mother taught me that, to treat everyone the same. It doesn't matter if you're a CEO, doesn't matter what your title is, because you never know. They may have on jeans and a t-shirt and may be a corporate vice president, and you have no idea who you're interacting with and what influence they have. So one big advice that I would give is treat everybody the same. Just be kind and, and be cordial. And really, people like nice people. So you will be surprised at how many people who are willing to help you just because, you came at them, from a really great space and you're not like mean and, and demanding and stuff like that. And so I would leave with that because I have literally encountered so many blessings in my life because of how I interact with people, and how, because I'm so nice to people, people just want to help me, or they want to do things for me. And I would have never, ever expected it, but it was because of my interaction with them. So I would leave with that and say, yeah, that's
everybody
huge.
has a story.
Really
Everybody has a story. You know what I mean? And it's there's a word for it. It's Sonder. You know what I mean? Everybody has a life just as complex with their own goals and wishes as you do. You know, and it's important to be able to hear that story from various types of people, because that's how you get the cheat codes, really. Is by listening to other folks' stories, and to take tidbits out of that, and to learn and start crafting your own story.
I love that. So before we go into the next,
yeah.
Can you hear me? No, you're right. I got my own sound issues going on my show. Y'all can hear me. But before we go into our next segment, and Teneika, we'll circle back to you. Brittany's getting ready to hop off. She has other engagements, but I did want you guys to have the opportunity to definitely give some claps for Brittany. Thank you so much for joining us. And I would love for her to say her last, couple words, whatever you want to say, and then, you can go ahead and hop off.
Yeah, before we even hopped on and we were introducing ourselves with just the panelists here, I was talking to everyone about the idea of being strategic with your career and doing absolutely nothing without intention, as Solange, one of my favorite artists, says. And I learned that very early in my career. I'm like, how are all these people succeeding? And they ain't even really putting in the work. It's because they're incredibly strategic. Like, as I said, you cannot wake up one day and be like, oh, I'm just gonna apply to this random job that I have no experience with. It's not gonna work, and it's not gonna land. So because of that, I've seen so many people struggle in their career and achieving their career goals. And I don't want that for the next generation of young Black professionals. So I started Hayles Consulting because I want to make sure that people not only are intentional with their career, and they walk into the room with confidence, and they sit at the table with confidence, because it's not enough to know that you should be there. You should also be speaking up when you are there. I'm not sure who said it earlier before, but you have to speak to your accolades, you have to speak to your accomplishments, and you have to talk about yourself. And even when you have a manager who's amazing or people who are championing you, every team is not going to be like that. So speak about yourself, be intentional, and really put yourself out there. And that's why I created Hayles Consulting, where I do resume reviews, interview prep, and just career coaching as well. I see the future of Hayles being a place where I host events, and not your traditional boring networking event, but an event where there are activities and there's music, basically the Coachella of networking events. I don't know how it's gonna happen yet, because we are in the middle of it. Yeah. We're making it a fun and interactive environment, because I don't think that really exists as of yet. So that's the exciting thing for me. And I just want everybody to be, as I said, not only intentional in their career, but super, super confident, because we deserve it. And I've seen so many people just have their souls destroyed once they enter into the corporate space, but that's just because sometimes we forget how great we are, and we allow people to determine our greatness, and I don't want that. So if you are interested in working with me, you can email me at info@Hayles Consulting. Chanel, if you want to send out my email later.
Yeah, I went ahead and dropped it in the chat, haylesconsulting.com. I'll go ahead and send a thank you email after this as well, and then I will totally include that information. I think it's very important. A couple of my mentees I had sent over to Brittany because I didn't have the cognitive capacity to help, but she does. And so always making sure that you're leveraging the resources that you have. So thank you so much, Brittany. We love you. We appreciate you. We see you, girl. And I'll be forwarding your information shortly.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good weekend. Bye.
Have a good one. And so, yeah, that leads us to our next segment. Before we go, Teneika, I thought I'm not sure if you still had something to say.
Yeah, I was going to say networking horizontally. I used to throw all these big networking.
Girl, the feedback, babe. I'm so sorry. I can't hear you past the Zoom.
And when I talk, it shows you.
Oh, that is wild.
Oh, no.
Let me mute myself. Maybe it's me.
Let's all mute and see.
Does it still have feedback? Everybody, I'm gonna leave and come back.
All right, love. Perfect. No worries. So yeah, guys, as she comes on back, we're going to go ahead and move after her question into Q&A. If you guys do have some questions that you would love for the panel list to go ahead and answer, make sure you drop it in the Q&A section. We have a couple already. And then if you guys don't have access to the Q&A session, I don't know what kind of devices you guys are on. If you are part of the Mentor Me program, you can go ahead and drop them in the Slack channel, or you guys can text me, either or. But yeah, we'll go ahead and begin with that quickly. So while she logs back in, this is a pretty basic question I feel like any one of us can kind of answer. How did you decide to leave your hometown for a job, and was it a challenge to adjust to a new environment? B, I know that you have hopped around quite a bit, and so has Felanice. So you guys are open to answering that question too.
Yeah, so a couple things about me. So I was originally born in Mississippi, and then I went to like middle school and high school in Tennessee. And then I went to college first in North Carolina, then in Chicago, and then I spent 12 years in Chicago before moving to the West Coast for Apple originally. So a couple things. So one, my family does not leave where they're from. So, you know, I had to deal with the anxiety and fear that my family kind of really tried to put on me, which was kind of like very stressful. You know, like I literally had family members who were like, I'm even afraid to go to Memphis because the terrorists might get me. Right. So like, I was just like, why would terrorists want to come to Memphis? Like, that don't make sense. Right. We ain't got nothing in Memphis, you know? So like when I moved to like, you know, Chicago and like these other places, it was like very shocking for them. But I think, you know, what it ends up being, you have to become brave in a way that's very different. Right. So like I had to get really good at making friends because the one thing I will tell you is that it can be so lonely. And so if you really want to be your best, most successful version of yourself, you have to like be able to create community or bring your community wherever you are. And so like, you know, the first thing I did, like, so I'm a lesbian and I'm trans, all the good stuff. So the first thing I did in every city when I moved was find the lesbian softball league, right? To find the LGBTQ center, to find the Black center, right? And so then I would go to those places and say, hello, I'm a lonely person. I'm very adorable. Can you be my friend? It's so like kindergarten, but it really worked very effectively. And that meant that like I could easily come in and like very quickly have a community who would help support me in my current role, but also very specifically, you know, when I started thinking about, oh, what do I need next in my roles? I also had that great community that I could go to. And so I would say that, like, you know, first and foremost, family can be really difficult in these situations because a lot of times because they are in a very different wavelength or different career, like they can be very fear driven. And so it can be very stressful. And so I've even had to really set up very specific boundaries with my family. Like, we're not going to talk about my career or what I'm doing because I know you guys don't get it. And it's okay that you don't get it. But I'm not going to let your fear-based mechanisms, you know, kind of hurt my psychological, you know, health because you're telling me that I shouldn't do that thing. And I should also say that what's really funny is because all my other family except for my mother. My mother was like, baby, go do whatever you got to do, right? So that's the cool thing there as well. And then, like I said, you know, the great thing, and we talked about resources. So obviously there's always Slack groups, there's always group me's, there's always like email listservs still, you know, that you can join too. And so, you know, you have to also be a really great Googler, right? Make sure you're looking up all those different terms and like really figuring out exactly what's out there, and then just join. Some of those groups are going to suck, some of those groups are going to be awesome, but it's another really great mechanism as well.
And to add to that, like, so I was born and raised in Chicago, but I also lived in California, so I equally call them both my home. So for me, moving around, my family was not happy when I moved because, you know, like my family was like, we don't go anywhere. We're not trying to get on a plane. We're here. So like, why are you leaving? And so I left to create an opportunity for myself that I wouldn't be afraid. That was really the reason why I left. I saw this sort of cultural dynamic within my family that was like fearful, and I wanted to be brave. And so the first step for me being brave was me literally packing my bags. I gave them a 2-week notice, like they were my job, and said, I'm moving to California. I didn't have a job. I was engaged at the time. I broke up with, like, it was a lot of stuff going on. So I moved, and then my life just sort of propelled from there, out of, you know, just that courage that I, you know, had to just leave. Then I went to school in Missouri, and then I went to stay with my family for about a year in Kentucky. And then I'm here in Seattle. So I've bounced around a lot. And one thing that is true for me is that I never regretted anything that I did. So I feel like, it has made me who I am. And, Seattle was interesting. But I would say that, moving, having the courage to move and realizing what your goal is. What is your goal? Like, are you just moving because, you just you want to turn up? Are you moving because you have a strategic goal? And so me moving to Seattle was more for Microsoft, and it was never about, having the Black community. But I wanted that when I got here. It was like, okay, hey, how do I stay in Seattle? What's going to make me stay? So I had to buy a house, all these little things that I had to do in order to make me feel at home. And so I think that when you decide to, bounce around, don't let anyone challenge what you're doing. Like, my family called me nuts. They were like, you're insane. Why do you keep bouncing around? Why don't you just stay in one place and stay there forever? And I was never that person. But then now my family says to me, because I've been all over the world, I've traveled the world and back again. And what they say to me now is, I wish I had the courage that you have to go and just do things and just have fun. And so I look back on those moments and go, I'm so glad that I challenged myself to just leave. I think that sometimes when we stay in our environments, we are hindered because we don't, your family they want to baby you. They want you to, to stay that little person that they remember. But having the courage to leave means them also having the courage to let you go and let you be exactly who you were meant to be. And so butterflies are my favorite thing, and I love them because they transform. And so like butterflies, we too must also transform into the people we were meant to be. So don't be afraid to leave. Don't be afraid to, to fly, and don't be afraid to fail, whatever that is. Even if you go and you fail, it's okay. I have failed at a lot of things. Oh my God, I could write a book about it. But at the end of the day, it's those things that made me who I am today. They made me authentically me. And so, so go. If you want to go across the country, you want to go to London and go to school and have a great experience. And if you want to live in London, one of my friends is in Japan and she lives there, do it. Because you only get one life and you only get one opportunity to say, I did that thing, it didn't work, and I'll try something else. Life is it's about moments. And so that's probably my best advice. And who knows, I may not stay at Microsoft my whole career. I hope I will. But even if I don't, the opportunity is there for me to go somewhere else. So
you talk about Seattle, because I get a lot of people, they have opportunities. Is there still feedback?
No.
So I have referred people, and I'm like, it's do it for 1 to 2 years. It'll get you in the door. If you have nothing else, it's Seattle, I understand, but it'll get you in the door of your opportunity. People don't want to go. And I heard of the band Blacks at Microsoft, they've had people talk about the Seattle Black community.
Seattle Free, that's what it's called. It's Seattle Free, that's the correct term. And it's a real term. So how do you stay? People? How do you stay in Seattle? Here's how you stay in Seattle. You create, true story. This is free advice. You create your own network. I have an amazing network of people. Black, white, Hispanic, everybody. These people are my tribe. And I can go to them for career advice. I can go to them, hey, I want some barbecue. Can you smoke me some chicken wings? I have this tribe of people. So I think that if you come here and you decide to buy into the ideology of the Seattle Freeze, because it is true, so what that means is people here are in their little nested circles. And so they're married, and most of, they hang out with the married people. And then you have the single people who are literally trying to be married. And so they're doing their thing. And so you have to literally figure out, where do you want to live? I moved to Renton, which is a very diverse city. And so people were like, oh my God, we're living in Bellevue. Why would you leave? I wanted to be around people that look like me. And so you have to decide where you want to live, and all of that, couples into where you go. What do you want to do? I'm into plays. I'm into music. So I surrounded myself. There's a lot of meetups, and there's a lot of different, channels and stuff that, I mean, it's amazing how many people are on these channels. And I met so many people from just these meetup groups. Oh my God, we're going to go to a play. Oh my God, we're going to go out to eat. We're going to go bowling. And so these people then became my friends. But I think it starts with how introvert. I am an introvert and an extrovert. So I guess I'm an ambivert. I'm a little bit in the middle. You have to be open to meeting people, and you have to be open to just figuring out what you want to do. I love to play golf. So I had to find people that, want to play golf as well. So that's how you stay in Seattle, because there's a lot of things to do. Mm-hmm. You have those rainy moments, and then you have those times you got to have a happy light. And a happy light is when that sun is not out and you need some UV rays coming in. So Seattle's a little interesting, but
so you just have to make it work.
You got to make it work.
Yeah, I love that. And so next I wanted Rial to talk to this point too. I know that he is Brooklyn born and raised, and now he is on the West Coast. So I think he would be a really great resource as well.
Yeah, look, this is, I think, world view certainly comes into play. So this entire planet belongs to you, right? You can't throw smoke up, build a factory, throw smoke up on one part of the planet and think it's not going to impact another part of the planet. This entire planet belongs to you. And so when we think about traveling from that worldview, it was never about I'm leaving home and this entire planet is my home, right? And I'm coming, this is coming from a space where, a lot of people talk about I'm gonna live here, I'm gonna die here, I'll be here forever, right? And they mean it. Like that's a badge of honor, that's the way it's communicated. But for me, initially it was, I'll go anywhere. You should feel comfortable going anywhere, at least to visit, at least to understand, maybe even where your what feels more like home for you is at, right? Because you might start in a space and then travel to some other part of the planet, get there, and then discover, wow, this feels more like home than I could have ever possibly imagined, right? And so that's first. And then, as I went from Brooklyn, I go to Alaska. And that's where I was, initially going to be a marine biologist. But once I did that, that opened the door for everything. It was like, I can go anywhere. I can go to Indonesia. In fact, I almost went over to Indonesia and took a role in Thailand recently. So, but that's important because as you're building your career, you shouldn't be thinking, I want to be at this particular company. And we talked about earlier and throughout this discussion, there's been talk about intention, there's been talk about strategy, setting your goals. And if you understand that the planet is yours and that you're at a company and you're in a relationship with the company because this relationship is helping you achieve your goals, that's going to help you, because when people look at you from the outside, they're going to have another level of respect for you, because you didn't come to them with a handout. Not with a handout looking for alms. You came with a handout with an exchange of palms, so it was a shaking hands, and it's a mutual agreement. And I have a number of different goals, and part of me achieving these goals means me going to this part of the planet, this part of the United States, and then entering into this relationship with you, this particular company, right? And even going into a company, when I speak with a lot of young UX people, even just young people coming out of school, they're so focused on getting the job. And that is the goal. Like, I just want to get the job. And when they get there, I can see it. I can see that their goal was simply to get a job and to get paid. And I have the awareness enough to be able to pull these people in and have the kind of discussion with them that says, listen, in order to get in there, you have to be incredibly talented. But talent's not going to keep you here. And no one else is going to tell you that. Right. And there's certain things that you have to do in order to be successful. And you better know what you're here for. And people will ask you, they'll have those kind of discussions with you. And they'll ask you, what do you want? What do you want to achieve? And if it's just doing good work in a space where everyone does excellent work, you will not survive. You're not going to make it. So you better have an attitude that says, when I get into this company, it's because I want to impact the company in a certain way. And you should already have in mind what that's going to be. Being open, to having new paths and being fluid, but you should certainly be able to define what it is that you're here for, right? And so that means that means talking with people before you enter to a company, before you actually started a company. Don't let the company sell you on their brand. You're not there to work for the brand. You help there to build the brand, right? And that's a different disposition. It's a different stance to take when you're entering into these relationships with these companies. But the point of, you know, traveling, and just, I can only make this recommendation that somehow you adopt a worldview that this entire world belongs to you. You're talking about working with that some of the top companies in the world. You're talking about global companies anyway, right? And so you want to be on a level where you're thinking about the planet as it belongs to you. You don't want to go be sent from your company to another part of the planet, get there, and then you're feeling all brand new, acting brand new, like timid because you don't think you belong here. You're worried about how people are going to perceive you. No, this entire planet belongs to you. So wherever you go, you are home. And whenever you enter into a conversation with somebody, you're inviting them into your space. Right. And there's that, you know, we talked about the respectability, achieving respectability. And then in order to be respectable, you have to be respectful. Right. And so, you know, all of these things are interrelated, but don't limit yourself. Don't sell CELL yourself into a tiny part of the planet in order for you to be successful. Get out there and into the world and own the world, own your space.
Wow. Powerful words. Lots of jewels are dropping. There we go, words. The next person I would love to answer, or is going to answer, is going to be B. And you can kind of take it from here. So there's a question.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I was going to say, so Melissa, your question really spoke to me about being someone who is differently abled. If you notice right now, I have a neck brace on. I just had my second spinal surgery in like 18 months, right? And so I definitely realize, you know, there's this challenge when you have differences, right? Especially noticeable differences, that it's not always easy for people to understand what exactly is going on. And so I wanted to kind of communicate first, you know, an experience that really completely changed fundamentally how I think about interviewing and how I should approach people. So at Sprout Social has this tremendous commitment to being available to everyone. And it starts with the product and it goes to also their employees. So we actually, when we start at Sprout Social, you get a handbook about how to interview people. And it talks about, well, if this person, you know, has, it has like a different level of hearing, if this person has a different level of seeing, if this person is in a wheelchair, and it tells you exactly what you should do, who you should reach out to actually create an interview space for them so that they can make sure that they are super, super successful in their interview. Now, the thing about that is the Sprout Social, that's their like fundamental commitment. Not every company focuses in that same way. So there is a challenge with that. And it's the same challenge you have, even if you're just like, you know, you're just talking about being Black, right? You can't just go into every interview and assume that people are going to be, you know, culturally competent in understanding what types of challenges that you might need versus someone else. And so the reason for that, though, is because like people, I mean, until people have that experience of dealing with you, they often don't think about it. So for you, I would actually suggest doing a lot of research on what a company's values are. So for instance, one of the first things I saw this morning when I woke up was a post from one of the leads of Google's accessibility team. And they were talking about, you know, the fact that this is the 30-year anniversary of ADA and what Google's doing right now to be more accessible. And so from there, I would probably make the assumption, which is reasonable because I actually do know that they do this, that Google probably has processes in place to help folks who might have different who might have different disabilities be successful in their interview process, right? And so that's the type of due diligence that I would say that you might want to do is first be selective in who you interview with, because like one, you don't want to waste your time with people who are not evolved enough to be thoughtful about the issue that you have. Two, take on partners with your recruiter, right? So any good recruiter, like their value add is that they are going to go out, find someone who's going to be able to do this job, who's going to land this job, and then fill this space, right? So that recruiter should be working with you to help ensure that everyone who's going to be interviewing you is ready to kind of to give you the space to get out what you need. And for instance, one thing that they might do, and this is something I heard from one of my coworkers at Netflix, that they did for them because they have severe anxiety. Right. So they actually stress out so much because of their severe anxiety, which has been medically diagnosed, that it's very difficult for them to, in a 30-minute interview, get out their ideas. So they expanded her interview space, right? So it went from a 30-minute interview to 45-minute interview to give her the space, even if she needed to leave the room for a little bit, then to come back, right? And so that's the thing, that's the type of thing about companies that are really invested in kind of, you know, accepting your whole being, is that they're going to come up with ways to make you successful in that interview process so that you can kind of land it. Something else that I might even talk about, especially with virtual interviews, because most of us are going to be doing virtual interviews for probably the next 6, 12 to 2 years, you know, 24 months type situation, is that also, like, feel free to say, you know, today is a bad day for me. Can I type some of this stuff in? Right. I know for a fact that, you know, if you were interviewing with my team, we would all be completely amenable to that. Right. So it's a couple of different things there. One, make sure it's the right company, do your research, take your recruiter on as a partner. And 3, look at the various options and tools that might be available to you and suggest proactively. So don't wait for them to suggest it. Proactively think about what you might need. And then, like, bullet point out to them, like, if you do all these different things, this interview is going to be super successful for me.
Hey, so to +1 for everything that B said, but I have a hidden disability. So I have systemic lupus, and it affects me cognitively. It affects my body. Every day is a different day with lupus. So I am a part of Disability In. Actually, just spoke for Ability In and Disability In just recently, and I'll try and find the videos and have Chanel post them. But because of Disability In, I interviewed with Microsoft and a gazillion other companies at this particular conference in Orlando, Florida. So, Melissa, to your point, you can actually, like, be a part of Disability In. You can interview with different companies. You can ask for specific accommodations. The reason I chose Microsoft was because of their accessibility and their ability to accommodate me, you know, in my role, and to allow me to be me. You know, I can have a disability, I can be myself, whatever day that looks like. Lupus is very, very unpredictable. And so coming into the interview, I asked for accommodations, and I was allowed the ability to have everything that I needed, which was, you know, a little bit extra time to, you know, to respond, because sometimes my memory is affected and I have to think, and you can see me thinking, and I'm trying to, you know, figure out, like, what's happening, what are you saying, so I can digest it. So I need extra time. I also need a room that is not super, you know, cold. I need a room that's sort of, you know, the temperature is like pretty warm. So there's a lot of different things that I needed to ask for, even to the point of special lighting. I can't have fluorescent lighting. So don't be afraid to say what you need, but also what I did, you know, because I was off work for 7 years. I got sick in 2012. And I didn't go back to work until 2018, and then officially full-time April 2019. And so what that meant for me was to, you know, strategically figure out a process of what does going back to work look like? What does that mean for me? You know, not every company can accommodate you to the level that you want to be accommodated, even though they understand disability. And I am a huge advocate for ADA. I love the fact that, you know, I was able to celebrate with them for their 30th anniversary and being a panelist. But at the same time, I also am on the receiving end of the accommodations. And so what does that look like? What does it look like for you? That means literally being self-aware and understanding that this is my reality. It doesn't mean that you're limited. It means that this is your ability to do the thing that you need to do for your job. And so I encourage you to look up Disability In. They're also on LinkedIn. They also have this huge website. They have a conference that they just had just recently, and literally thousands of students come. Thousands of people, like, interview at the company. You'll find Microsoft there, Google, Facebook. I mean, there's so many companies that are there, but it gives you a safe place to be able to interview, to be able to ask questions, to be able to, you know, research those different companies, to network, to talk to different people, and to understand that there are people just like you that may have a hidden disability, that may have, you know, somebody may be in a wheelchair, somebody may be blind. There's so many different people, and disability is such a interesting space that, you know, not everybody gets it. Not everybody understands disability. They think you have to be, you know, physically something they can see for them to actually understand and digest and really be empathetic to what you're going through. So Does it mean that you can't work? Absolutely not. It means that you alter the way that you work. So I have a flex schedule, for example. There are days that, like yesterday, I had a serious migraine and I couldn't work in the morning. And so I had to flex my time and I worked later on in the day. So I came in the door with these types of accommodations. So one, to protect me from an ADA perspective, but two, to give them an understanding of this is how I work. And when lupus rears its ugly head, this is me. And so you have to be open to understanding, but I also am open to sharing. And so what the space that I am in now is sharing how my disability affects me, but also giving people that courage to be able to also speak their truth. So don't let having a stroke prevent you from doing anything, or any other disability or anything that's wrong that you feel that, oh my God, I can't work with this. Yes, you can. You just have to figure out another way. In disability, in that word, if you take out the first part, there's ability, and find out what that ability means for you, and what does working mean for you. So I would say check out Disability In. Check out there's another one. Lyme Connect. They also deal with people with disabilities. I literally researched what organizations I could actually be a part of that were specific for people with disabilities. And so now I recruit at various conferences for people that specifically have disabilities. So there is so many opportunities. I will literally try and figure out some resources, and I'll give them to Jonel to give.
Most definitely. Thank you so much for that, Felanice. Guys, we are coming to literally the last 4 minutes of this wonderful panel. I do want to say thank you to all of those who have attended. Thank you to the attendees, but thank you also to the panelists for dedicating this time out of your wonderful Saturday, the sunny Saturday, to spend some time with the mentees, just dropping gems and giving your honest experiences as well. According to their preferred way of being contacted, I'll go ahead and send that information out as well. I will be staying on past 3 to answer some of those questions again about the program and everything else as well, and the questions that were not answered in the chat. For those who are open to staying, totally, we can do that as well. And for those who definitely have other agreements, totally fine. Again, I'll let you guys connect with them offline and ask those wonderful questions. Okay. Awesome. So yeah, thank you again to all of the panelists. I'm so grateful for you all for coming. It's such a pleasure and such a blessing and honor to have you all a part of my tribe. You guys are strong, powerful, just amazing people, and it means a lot for the mentees to see this, that they know that their careers that they would like to obtain is not impossible. It's not impossible. It's definitely obtainable with the correct strategies and resources. You can totally get there. Before you guys drop off or hop off in the last 2 minutes, is there anything else that you would like to say, comment on, shameless plugs?
I'd like to say thank you, Jonel, for putting this together, and to all the other panelists. It's really inspiring to be up here with all of you, all of these successful people in your own right. It's extremely inspiring, and I've personally learned a lot. And I hope that all the attendees have found something to take away from each of us in their careers, in their career journey, and their life journey in general. So thank you for putting this together, Shannon.
Echoing what Daniel said, for sure. It sounds like we were all supposed to be doctors, but somehow we ended up doing something else. And that's okay. That's amazing. And it's so nice to see so many beautiful Black faces in tech. So this just shows we're not monolithic. We're not just all artists. We're not just all one form. We're all different. We're so smart. We're so capable. And like you said, we deserve to be here. So thanks so much, Jonel. This was awesome.